Welcome to Movie and a Beer, everybody. This is Dan bringing us in, and we have some wonderful friends that have been punished tonight by watching this really strange film.
Some wonderful friends, and also Blake.
No, Blake, you're a wonderful friend too.
You're a wonderful friend.
Yeah,
We just
boys.
hated this film more than we did.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so, well, we have...
I'm Aaron. I'm still figuring out my expertise this week. I'm sorry, dear listener. I think I'm
Pig carcass?
no
Speed eating expert?
Salt pork.
Salt pork expert?
Maybe salt pork expert. I don't know. I don't know. I'm the number 3. I'm the number 3 expert.
There you go. There you go.
No, expert on the number 3.
Because the Russians always come in first.
I don't have an expertise. I refuse to have one.
All right.
Well, that's
This is Blake.
over 2. Okay.
And there's,
Well, no, I was telling you, that was my bit. That's my plan. Like, I don't have expertise for this.
And this is Brian, your soup expert.
soup for the day.
All right, I'm leaving.
It's soup for the
You know,
day.
Brian, it's good that you introduce yourself last because you can upstage us so easily.
Well, he picked nothing. You picked
I
I'm
stumbled.
still thinking.
Yeah. Oh, good Lord.
What was
Okay,
Dan's
so
expertise?
I don't have an expertise.
Yeah, he's our
Dan-
host.
I'm
Dan's the host
I'm
and
bringing it in.
producer, and
We're watching this. We watched a film called Taxidermia that came out in 2009. This is an Hungarian film that's not rated because there's weird shit in it, a lot of nudity and weird stuff.
I'm going to stop you there, Dan. We didn't watch it so much as we experienced it.
You have to experience this film.
we
You
had
don't-
it wash over us kind of like soup.
I close my eyes a lot.
Okay, listeners. So in typical Dan fashion, I picked a weird movie now that Brian is back in town for a little bit. I was like, hey, let's watch this crazy thing I just got for us. And it was like, sure, why not? Because the previews tell you nothing, as a good preview should. And what you read is the synopsis of the film tell you nothing.
Well, the preview is 3 generations of men. The first one's flawed in this way. The second one's flawed in this way. And the third one is weird. And like...
Oh, they're
and
all
that's-
3 weird.
And the trailer is visually stunning. And
Yeah.
I think we could all agree that
The movie in general is really stunning.
the movie in general is really stunning.
Yes.
The cinematography is great.
I kept
notch.
saying, wow, this is crazy framing. They do some really interesting shots. They do rolling shots where like they have a tub that
I'll admit, the rolling tub to show the passage of time was good.
Very good.
And like, doing really, really high shots from like third person above,
Right.
like video game like, because that's where they got it from. I
Like
mean, I don't know other
isometric.
shots. Yeah, I don't know other movies that have ever done that just for a single like couple of scenes.
And practical effects were amazing. The sound effects were amazing.
Oh, the sound design.
The lighting was really good.
Yeah.
I said to Brian at one point, this lighting's, I can't stop thinking of the word dingy.
Yeah.
And it was like the wedding
The,
singing.
the wedding
section,
scene
yeah.
felt like a polka
It
bar
felt
in
like
the
it was,
50s.
if I was in there, it'd be simultaneously too hot and cold at the same time.
Like
Like
stuffy.
a uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, stuffy.
Yeah.
Like a cold stuffy somehow.
Yeah. So we sought out. I sought out some beers from that part of Europe
Because Dan does all the work on this
because
podcast.
it is part of Europe. And I found a couple of interesting ones from Austria. I couldn't find anything from Hungary because they don't really export beers outside of Hungary. There's breweries there, but I found a couple that
Well,
are
Dan,
pretty- not
I apologize
super
for this
common,
joke. It's not called Thirstery.
but It's not. It's Hungary.
Wow.
Not Thirstery.
Yeah.
That's
No, never remember
better
that.
than that. All right.
The
Weird,
thirst-
slow cello music while horrible things happen on
The
screen.
Thirstarians.
Thirstarians.
Like until the thirst is coming for you.
So we
I'm
have
conflating it with the current meaning of thirsty, and it's really messing me up.
Yeah,
That's a very different movie. Well, actually,
Yeah.
not that different. Hold on.
No. Anyway, sorry, Dan. Go ahead.
So I happened to be in the North Portland neighborhood on Mississippi and stopped by Bridgetown Beer House, and they had a Stiegel Radler when we got the Himbeere or the raspberry version, and the other is a Octaringe, which is actually in Vienna, Austria. And it's the place that invented Vienna Lager. I mean, this is the place it's from.
I'd say it's multi and authentic.
It's been around since like 1837, and Stiegel's been around for like 500 years.
I was going to say I've seen Stiegel a lot, but I thought it was like
Grapefruit.
grapefruit.
There's
It's
grapefruit. orange.
I usually have grapefruit.
So this version of the Stiegel brewery that's making this style of beer has only been around since the 60s. The Radler thing is new. This is like 2%. It's I have the details, which we'll talk about later on like the percentage of fruit juice to beer and what the base beer is, and it's a super light drinking thing. It's a summer brew, and it's
I'm looking forward to
summertime,
talking about that because I've always been a little interested in that ratios.
So
but
can you tell me about speed eating?
it's
No.
horrible and I hate it. Well, it's not horrible. I'm sure there is some competitive edge to it. It's just a very specific kind of sport.
It's gross.
The visuals just really messed me up. I had my eyes shut for a lot of it because there's a point where I've only known speed eating in hot dog contests where you have like how X number of hot dogs, X amount of time, boom, whoever got the most wins. But these guys had rounds, and the best way to get through rounds of eating is to make sure the stomach's empty again. To do that is to
Vomit
bring it
it.
back up, and it's not. I hate. Ugh, I
Well,
don't like
There
it.
was a lot of sound.
There was
a
a
lot of
sound.
visual.
There was a vomitorium that they used. But Blake, what's hot dog eating contests? How different is that for you as compared to the soup and then the aspect with meat?
The way they shot this, and the cinematography is really good. Like I caught myself like chatting with Brian about some of the aspects. Like, oh, okay, this is cool. Like, come on.
There's a lot of allegory going on.
There's no alligators. Aaron lied to me.
Hey,
Allegory.
So,
But it's different because this is shot to be just kind of a grim, realist, like gritty kind of look at this thing. Nathan's hot dog contest is like it's bright and
Happy.
loud, and it's like it feels like a sitcom compared to this.
yeah, so this film, I think it's better understood, at least in the write-up about it. It is an allegory for post-war Hungary, and the film happens in 3 segments.
Yes.
All 3 segments, everyone is reprehensible,
Yeah.
and no one is happy.
Correct.
essentially.
And the 3 parts pertain to early post-war Hungary, maybe World War II Hungary when they were allied with the Germans.
Right.
The Soviet era, which is near post-war Hungary, and then modern Hungary after the Iron Curtain fell.
Yes.
Now, since I'm not a history of Hungarian student of Hungarian history, I don't know how to match the 3 different vignettes with what was going on.
What was really going on? Yeah, and I think that's
And that's where a lot of the film is lost. So
Yeah.
we've really got to talk about kind of the art of the film.
yeah.
Yeah.
And again,
we can enjoy it for what its intent was.
and I kept saying, why would somebody film this? There's
And-
got to
and
be a
also,
reason. There's
where
gotta be
else
a
would
reason.
you see these images?
How am I watching this? Because it's pretty intense. I mean,
and gross.
there's people that make visual horror, body horror, and animal horror to make it. This was meant, again, to tell a story that reflects what was going on and, how the person is interpreting their history or having lived it. And it's just like, this is insane. Why are we, it was a weird film. This is not something that any normal person should see. You definitely need to be a film nerd and understand
Even that doesn't tear you all the way in
a
my
little
case.
bit. It's challenging, and I think I'm glad we watched it as it's a one and
I'm
done.
not.
It's a one and done.
I love you guys. I'm glad I watched it with you. I kind of wish I hadn't watched it.
Yeah,
Challenging.
this would be
I
grim
would've-
alone in a room by yourself.
Oh,
Smoking
yeah.
smoking cigarettes,
Holding a candle as you're peeking through a hole.
smoking cigarettes, the smoke making that cool lighting effect in noir.
Yeah. I don't know. I think the end reflected, it's like so we're going to plot spoil the hell out of it. All right. So the person that they're following dies at the end every time, except for the second story. But we kind of
Well, the thing is, they die at the end, but they leave someone to carry on. It's 3 generations of the same family.
Yes.
The last one did not sire
correct
a kid,
He
so
took
it ends
himself.
with him.
He took himself as he taxidermied himself.
But he does have a legacy though with,
With
this
that-
art.
those douchebag hipster art nerds.
Well, don't you think that's the filmmaker's comment on himself? He's turning the grim reality of Hungary into an art form.
Yes.
Right.
Maybe.
They're-
I don't know
they're-
anything about the director. I
They're
didn't read anything.
sensationalizing what happened, and they explained it. Like, dude's standing there explaining what he found, and this is what it's about.
I did love the book ending of during the credits. We hear a man speaking and the woman translating, and I was thinking, well, okay, this feels like it's on purpose, like making fun of artsy films. But then it paid off at the end when he's speaking on the exhibit, and she's translating. Like, okay, that's pretty cool. I
And
like
it's
that.
the same voice. It's the same
yeah,
female
yeah.
voice.
I feel
That's
like
pretty
we
cool.
should take maybe 2 steps back for our listener who's probably very confused at this point and say, there's 3 vignettes. The first one Well, I think we did explain this a little
No,
bit.
Yeah,
no, we
Blake
did
just
not.
said
We did not
there's
explain.
secrets.
We did not explain enough.
So the first one is heavily influenced. There's a number
War
of
II era,
soldiers right after or during World War II. It does say something to final victory.
Yeah.
So I think the war is still ongoing. I don't know, for me, I was kind of looking through this film and kind of checking off of like which of the 7 deadly sins are we going to see now. The first vignette, I'd say, there's lust, there's anger, but there's also like other different stuff too.
A pigtail.
Well, at the end of it. But
There's, I'm sure, some level of abuse.
But right, and so there's a
not sure
a
there
lieutenant,
is,
an
yeah.
army lieutenant, and then there's I assume an enlisted man.
He didn't say private. What do you call him?
It was an orderly.
That's
think.
it. That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And a kind of a dysfunctional relationship. And to be honest, I don't think we could ever really place if it was father-son or if it was lieutenant and
Like if there was actually a blood relation.
He
or
called
not.
him orderly. I mean, that's how it was translated on
Yeah,
the screen.
yeah, yeah.
So it wasn't, he was dressed like he was a junior, like an enlisted person, but we don't know if he actually was or wasn't.
Yeah, but he did all the menial work, but he was also a pervert.
Right.
And couldn't
Yeah.
satiate his desires. It was also implied that he was maybe a little slow mentally. He also had a cleft palate.
right.
Constantly had yearnings which he could never fulfill.
Which actually could probably well describe Hungary in the 1950s. I mean, to my knowledge, I don't really know, but I do know there was in the 1300s, Hungary was a very powerful nation. And had a strong history,
Right. And then it became subordinate to Germany and
And Russia.
and eventually Russia. Yeah.
Right.
I'm only half doing a bit. What does the rooster represent?
A
cock.
A cock. Yeah. So don't stick it out where the roosters are because it's going to get smacked.
So
And get pecked.
Yeah.
So yeah, he meets an untimely end, and then
The rooster? No.
I mean probably eventually. I'm sure they ate chicken at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then we follow his son, who becomes the competitive speed eater.
Yeah.
But
Is
I
that
do think
redundant? Competitive,
But
speed
always
eater?
subordinate to the Soviet speed eater.
Yeah,
Correct.
Right.
The
They
Soviets,
really hammer that.
Well,
in
it's
the
not really
scene.
speed eating; it's more competitive.
it's competitive eating, but
How much can you eat? So
their time.
So an allegory: how much of this Russian bullshit can you stuff down your gullet? Perhaps.
But I love when the second generation is conceived. The paternal figure was thinking about like other different potential partners in that sex act, and then also thinking about a pig, and it influenced the kid.
yeah.
The kid came out part pig because his dad was thinking about a pig during the act.
Correct.
And I mean, there is something. I'm sure there's more in that. I wish I knew more about kind of like Hungarian or even like it's Slavic.
Cut to
folklore.
a week or two from now when Aaron just kind of casually drops. Do you guys know in post-war Hungary? And he's just like have done research just out of curiosity.
Yeah, let me tell you about all the folklore involving pigs in Hungary.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
See, folklore. I'm on board with folklore. I love that stuff.
I imagine there's a big part of that in there.
Yeah, yeah.
That it's inside knowledge as cultural based, just
But-
what they're showing on the screen, and you just have to assume that it's there.
In our own culture, that we do associate pigs with gluttony.
Yeah.
And that becomes part of the second generation.
Where's that feed
it's
into
eater.
them horking down red caviar?
Yeah.
Red
That's
caviar
gotta be
with
something,
sides
right?
of bacon. Yeah.
Yeah. That was pretty.
Well, black
Strange.
caviar is Russian. That's Russian sturgeon,
Yeah.
and it's
I
a
didn't know
big Russian export.
Caspian Sea,
It's
right?
expensive.
So the red caviar may be a cheap imitation that they're forced to eat and continually
The guy did kind of
as
like,
entertainment for the
Yeah, he
higher
did
ups.
kind of
Hungarian answer to black
he
caviar.
invited them on the boat. He goes, "Well, we kind of told them you're gonna, do a demonstration, which is
speed eating.
which is like inviting some. It'd be like inviting Billy Joel over. And this is some stand-ups old bit. Inviting Billy Joel over and going, "Oh, hey, Billy Joel, how's it? Oh, well, what's this piano doing here? I mean, you wouldn't want to play a little bit, would you?"
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Here's a guitar. Play something for us.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah.
That happens a lot more frequently than pianos.
Well, I mean, it's tough to get pianos moving around. They're always dropping and killing tunes.
I know, right?
But the first
yeah.
generation had its its problems and issues, and
Yeah,
that definitely influenced the second generation.
Oh, of course.
Who had this like kind of grotesque fixation on one thing, that was meant to bring kind of honor or glory in a way that they could succeed in this competitive international sport for speed eating.
They were trying to get to Sochi.
Right.
You know, it's like what?
And it was really funny because they're talking about like the International Olympic Committee recognizing speed eating as a real sport.
Yeah,
And
it
I
was probably
thinking,
like in the 60s or 70s or something.
Right, I know. But and then to see then the second generation, the third generation grows up almost nothing like him. Like
No, not at all.
opposite in almost every regard of being kind of temperate with food. Where the other one
I'm
is
sure it's I'm not.
metaphor.
No, like a feeling,
Allegory?
like his anger towards his parents. Like I can't remember the right term.
rebellion or
Rebellion.
Unique
God.
identity, like setting on your own.
disavowal of what
These
came
are so
before.
close, but you're basically nailing. Yeah, him saying like, "I don't want this," and his dad. And you saw his dad,
Right.
yelling at him like, "You should be eating you should be eating. Do you follow my footsteps?" Like, I don't want to.
Right.
Quote
Yeah.
Friday Night Lights. I don't want your laugh.
Yeah, it's kind of scary. I mean, there's no quote unquote special effects or some practical stuff. There's some really interesting film. I said multiple times, wow, there's some like really interesting zooms that they do.
And
to-
also some rack focuses that
Yeah.
are very well done.
Remind me what a rack focus is.
That's where something in the foreground is sharp focus, and the background is fuzzy, and then
I
you
love that.
pull the focus, and suddenly the background's very focused, and the foreground is fuzzy.
Oh, I love it when movies do that.
Yeah, they knew what they were doing when they were doing this filmmaking.
Oh yeah,
People
I'm
who are
not doubting
well-crafted.
that. Like I'm definitely not commenting on the quality. It's a well-made film.
Masterfully done.
It's just the
I just don't
topics,
like it.
the topics, and some of the. So if you at all are squeamish about blood or
Surgery.
Vomiting.
yeah,
HEPA something. There's a name for it.
Yeah.
Hemophobia?
You don't want to watch
That
this
might be,
film.
is that blood?
I think it's blood.
There's one for vomiting.
Oh,
where
I don't
like
know
there's
the
a
vomiting.
I can't remember.
it's
There
just-
is one.
This film is
you get
challenging.
squeamish.
There are
Yeah.
some extreme close-ups on sexual organs that are not sexy.
No,
Right.
and
It's
there's
not eroticized at all.
Well, there's also I've never seen bird poop out of like a bird cloaca on film before, and this was my first one for that.
It went right at you. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
If Aaron picked the wrong time to put on the 3D glasses.
okay. So again, I randomly picked this film because it looked interesting, and I saw the previews, and I was like, all right, we have to watch this because it just looks stunning.
I'm glad I saw it. I'm glad I
am
saw
too.
it.
I mean, it's weird.
It's grotesque.
It's grotesque.
and there is some body horror about 10 minutes before the end that is almost unwatchable.
Right.
You know that
I
it's
shut
fake.
my eyes.
You know it's fake. It's not a real person cutting themselves, but he literally just like he taxidermies himself, and it's extreme close up because you get to see
it's-
organs and him cutting the organs himself.
Yeah, I
Just
mean,
like, what?
he is butchering some
Something.
piece of meat. It's a practical effect. It's not latex.
It's not made up. And
Which saying it like that kind of takes it back to the beginning when they butchered that pig.
exactly
Right.
And cats will eat you.
Oh yeah, everyone knows that.
Don't fuck with the
I
cats.
didn't
The
know
cats
that.
will eat
Yeah,
you.
cats are survivalists. If someone dies in a house and there's cats will eat them.
I was already
Yes.
a dog person, and now I've got more reasons. Okay.
I mean, good for the cat for surviving.
F
Yeah.
the cat. That's terrible.
But the fact that they were the three cats and he took the cats and he stuffed them into where the cats went into
Okay,
the belly.
dear
it's just
listener,
like, oh my god,
This was the competitive eater who had a falling out with his son, and he had
wife, I
3
think.
cats, and his wife left him.
Yeah.
He had 3 pet cats that he was quote unquote training to be competitive eating cats, and they were monstrously huge, and that becomes part of that character's demise. So, as context for
And then his son, the taxidermist, taxidermies his
Him.
dead father, and then
Yes.
himself,
and then himself.
but the
After-
cats also he taxidermist the cats eating his
yes,
dad.
inside the dad.
Inside, yeah.
Then he
they're half
taxidermied
sticking
the
in.
movie.
Yeah. So the
There's
movie,
layers.
the
It's
name
like
of the
an
movie
onion.
is Taxidermia.
It's like an allegory.
Yeah, no, it's
Wow, yeah.
taxidermia. So
I finally get it.
the whole thing is expressing how visually it's one thing, but the inside's hollow. I'm like their country, like their
like that.
their culture, their civilization. It's always been controlled over the last 100 years, and it's empty on the inside.
I thought
they
it
don't
was
have their own identity.
I thought it was self-defeating. I thought it was all Hungary. It was being self-defeating because it could be more democratic, it could be greater, it could be wealthier, but it ends up defeating itself in the way that every character in this movie gets in their own damn way
Correct.
because of their own whatever predilection they've got.
Whatever weird fetish they have, however they have to get off in whatever way they can get off, including a pig. But, gross. We digress.
Yeah, that's in here too.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm the expert on holding candles in ways you shouldn't. And he's like, I know how to burn off fur because I burned it off myself.
Yeah. So I'd say like 7 out of 10. It's a good movie, but it's super intense.
There's nobody I can recommend this to.
I'm not going to recommend it to anybody.
It is not entertaining.
No.
A film nerd might find it interesting. I mean, I'm glad I saw it.
I could,
but I've watched other things.
I could feasibly see this as like the last film of a very specific class at a very prestigious film school for the themes and the integration of history and how that all works out. And we're not doing a bit like the allegory of like Hungarian history.
There's no crocodiles in here.
Not for beautiful, bump it. But there's no like this isn't. You don't watch this for fun.
It's a difficult movie.
No. And not
at least Mad God, I could appreciate the
effort.
And again, the artistry, like it's a well shot film.
It's
the
beautiful.
sound design's beautiful. They did music just right. It wasn't overly like all over the place. The acting was fine. I thought it was good, but
and we watched a hard subbed version. So there was small amounts of English at the beginning and the end, but it's all in Hungarian or Russian or various other Slavic dialogues or dialects. And so what we got was hard subbed. So I tried turning on the subtitles and I was like, oh, those are way off and it's already subbed.
Yeah.
So shut those off. So when you go out and look for it, if you do seek this out, and there are places you can probably get it or stream it from, you've been warned.
But so
it's probably going to be already hard subbed because this is, it's hardcore. Hungarian is a really hard language. I've been to Hungary once. I've been to Budapest, and it's impossible to understand people because the language historically is made up of Swedish or Norwegian and
I don't think
Russian, and there's a weird group of people who came down and influenced the language back in like the 800s.
Might be like Lapland, like northern Scandinavia. But Blake a moment ago mentioned Mad God, which is a film that we watched maybe a year ago. And
Give or take.
I remember the way I describe Mad God, it is a poop tone poem.
Yes, because things just come out of other people,
right?
But it's made up. It's stop action.
But the question I've got, what other movies would you categorize this with?
None. This is a standalone because it's historical drama. The special effects are very, very specific. It's all practical. The commentary that it makes based on the subject matter and how the subject matter is used is on point. I mean, it does what it needs to do. It's just offensive as hell.
But surely there's another movie out there where it chronicles 3 generations of a family, and each generation is somehow worse than the one that preceded it.
That's called the one with the horse head in the bed.
Oh, God.
Godfather's 3
I thought you were going to say like North and South or something.
No, 3 generations.
So a film that it reminds me of is called The Sweet Movie.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned that.
Mid-'80s. Visually stunning. There is a 45-minute scene of people eating, puking, chopping off each other's appendages, and that's like chapter 3.5 of this film. And there are also...
We're laughing because that happens in this film. I'm like, there's just like...
There are also other objectionable scenes, but there are beautiful images. I would actually see that film again, but it also has some very hard to watch scenes.
The Sweet
Movie.
The Sweet Movie.
It's an Australian-U.S. co-production.
Oh, all right.
You heard it here
I thought it was Hungarian, but I just looked it up.
The only movie that really matches us in tone and weight and visuals is the incomprehensible Spice World.
Oh, here we go.
And with that, let's take the beers.
Yes. So, as mentioned at the beginning of the episode, I happened to be by Bridgetown Beer House. Thank you guys for having awesome beer selections. I knew that they have a little foreign selection of imports, and I was like, hey, let's check it out. And we had Stiegel Radler and Ochtringer Vienna Lager. And so both of these are from Austria, which is next to Hungary. I say that. It's Hungary. No, it's Hungary, as we would say. So
Hungary.
And so Stiegel Radler, you can find actually distributed all across the U.S. It's available everywhere. They have different flavors of it. And the whole idea with a Radler is that it's mainly juice and not as much beer. A typical 60-40, so 60% soda or fruit juice. usually a soda, so it keeps its carbonation a little bit. And then they usually use a really light beer, be it an ale or a lager that's just like a golden ale or something. This is a golden ale.
Do they
from
use
what I
a
can
lighter
tell.
beer to keep from overpowering the fruit?
The idea is to have the fruit juice there, but you want a little alcohol with it because, as you know, Europe back in the day, the only safe water to drink was alcohol.
Right.
You couldn't go drink off the tap because they didn't have taps. It was all well water and it was really bad. It would kill you.
Yeah.
This is kind of along those lines of, hey, let's mix this really light beer with this juice and see what happens. And everybody really, really liked it. Now, I know that the term Radler has been around a long time, and mixing of beers has been around a long time. That's not a new thing. But producing it and distributing it at the level that they are in the consistency of the flavors and just this beer, you can buy warm or cold. It doesn't matter because it's more juice than beer. It's not going to go bad. You can drink it warm. You don't have to cool it. But
I didn't like it as much warm, personally.
Well,
but I
also
also
get sweeter because
Yeah,
the juice
it's a little
is
too
gonna
sweet
stand
for
out.
me.
The beer will go flat. It'll lose all of its carbonation, and then you'll just have juice.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what happened.
I will say, like, I remember the first Stiegel I had, I was in Southeast Asia, and like on a real hot day, on a really sweaty, on a really humid day, this is gonna hit the spot. I mean,
I agree.
for hot weather. But the other thing I'm thinking of is like fruit can be really difficult to work with because of the natural variation in like sugars and the natural variation of flavors. You know, a raspberry isn't a raspberry, and those ingredients can be a lot more fussy.
So I'm going to tell you
that's
secret.
a great description, fussy.
They're mixing two finished products. So they're taking fruit soda or juice that's already been produced and is already packaged in to be consistent in flavor from a big distributor somewhere, and taking their beer and going, oop, let's pour them in the same container and then mix it up a little bit and then carbonate it and off we go.
I feel like it's the Wizard of Oz, and I've seen the man behind the curtain here.
Correct. The Stiegel brewery was founded in 1492. What else happened in 1492? Did Columbus sail the seas of blue?
Yes. and also the Reconquista.
Yes.
The Moors were kicked out of Spain.
Yes,
Same
they were.
year.
Yeah.
More, it's
the
more like
Inquisition.
less.
Nobody expects the Inquisition.
So if you actually just Google the Stiegel, just Google Stiegel, Stiegel, just Google their website. If you go to the English version of it, has a lot of history available.
That's pretty
Pictures
cool.
and stuff. It was.
I like that.
I was like impressed. I was like, wow, this is a really well done informational site. It doesn't focus on the beers. It focuses on the brewery and that it's a private brewery and they're representing themselves and they've been around a really long time.
That's pretty cool.
So they're marketing the story,
Correct.
like more than the product.
Yup. So the second one we had, and thumbs up to the Stiegel. I don't know if it went with the film. I mean,
I would argue it did not.
I could not drink anything that would go with this. There was too much vomit.
Bleach?
Nothing.
I like this one better.
Yeah.
But it was way too light for this film.
Yeah. I was just like, oh, it's the only two I can find from that.
No.
portion
I
of
mean,
Europe,
I commend the effort.
yeah.
It's I think different enough from the second one that we'll have a nice little comparison.
Competition.
Yeah.
Competition. So Octoringer Vienna Lager. So the brewery, Octoringer Brewery. This is a 100-year-old recipe, so it's not super old as far as where Vienna Lager comes from. The recipe, the style of Vienna Lager has been around a lot longer than 100 years, but this specific beer in production and distribution is one of the first ones and original ones that was distributed out of Vienna. So, I mean, it is the brewery's in Vienna. It's been around quite a while.
Interesting.
Actually, since
Well, the can says 1837.
1837. So not as old as Stiegel, but, still really nice. And
It's got some miles on it.
It does. So this is like a kind of like the hops on it are there. They should be there. It shouldn't just be a caramel malt bomb. It shouldn't just be sweet. It should have something to stand up to it. And it does. It's got like a grassy, almost like a limestone kind of like really earthy.
I've never heard you reference limestone when tasting beer before.
Well, okay. So if you lick a wet limestone, it's
mean-
going to have
I mean, that's
Which
nothing-
I do all the time.
That's my Thursday
the
night.
time.
That's what I'm doing.
four times before coming over here.
Yeah,
no
like
doubt.
what? If you're not licking limestone, who even are you?
But it does. I mean, the grassy hop is really nice, and it has a bready mid. I mean, it's not a light beer; it's a mid to chewy, There's some lighter caramel that you get on it from the sweetness, but it's got nice carbonation and it's not oversweet, and that's what I really like.
From what I remember, the first Vienna Lager I ever drank was Devil's Backbone back in Virginia,
Yep.
and it was okay.
Yeah.
It kind of dropped once Anheuser-Busch bought them, but it was okay. I was like, oh, this is interesting. This tastes all right. And I would say, from what I remember of that beer, this one knocks out of the water.
Yeah,
this is
very good.
So,
Yeah.
I'm glad that I was able to find this at, again, Bridgetown. You know, I'm not promoting them, but I want you to go to your local,
go shop
local. Go shop local people.
Right.
We love them. We support them, and I'm happy that they have a rotating good beer selection. I think this beer stood up well to the second part of the movie, which I think had a lot more grotesque and weird stuff to look at, and body horror stuff, and just gruesomeness on the screen.
It certainly matched the visual tone.
It was a heavier beer compared to the Radler.
Yeah,
for sure.
Agreed.
And it definitely went better with what was going on screen.
This I could see. Aaron mentioned drinking the Radler on like a hot day, makes it really refreshing. I could see this either in the spring or fall, after maybe a little nice little fall hike, and you get back and put a fire on.
Oh, I want this malty goodness all year round.
Oh,
Yeah,
of course.
I would,
if I had to pick a season, I'd pick fall.
I mean,
but
it's
drink it year round.
So I can tell you, listeners, all five of you, that you're never
Hey,
going to
he's
see
talking to
this.
me.
You're never going to see this film anywhere. This is an art house film. You're not
you've
going to
gotta
see
search it out.
You have to search it out.
And why would you?
Because that's their perversion.
That's the question is so visually stunning, really well done. But why? Why would you film that? I kept asking that.
They had a
times.
vision. Most directors and writers create because they have something they want to get at. Anytime I write a D&D one shot, it's because I want to see that out in the world and people to interact with it.
Well, maybe you live in a country that is becoming, more and more autocratic and authoritarian, and you want a way to criticize your political class without directly criticizing your political class.
That's reasonable. I like that.
You might make a film like this to, I'm not going to say the name of the Hungarian prime minister, but maybe you want to criticize somebody like him, and
somebody who might happen to share some qualities. I don't know. It's weird.
Like his like somebody whose name rhymes with Borban. And
what's a coincidence in Hungarian?
Right? Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but
right.
This was made like a long time ago. This
Was
is
it made? You said 2009.
2009 is a long time ago, dude.
Yeah. I don't know anything about Hungarian politics in 2009.
Yeah, that was.
I don't know anything about 2009.
Post-Soviet. It's post-Soviet era.
Yep.
But that's a long time ago. There's a lot has changed. So you have to remember what little bit I remember from being there and being in Budapest. Budapest.
Is there a correct way to say it?
I don't know.
I said it with the sh once, and then I got yelled at.
Well, I'm just trying to like channel my inner,
Hipster?
No, the Marvel movie scenes where it's like you have the dude that shoots arrows and the Hawkeye and Black Widow. You remember that thing in Budapest?
Oh yeah.
Because they always said "t" at the end, right?
Yeah. He said they remember it very differently because they were fighting aliens.
Correct. So the country at the time when the Russians pulled out, there was a big vacuum. And the mob and really rich people and people who don't necessarily want running your country moved in. And that was the reality. I mean, and it's still sort of that way today. I mean, you have somebody who's sort of an autocratic person in charge because there's nothing there to fill it. And if you've always been a subservient people and it's gone for generations, you don't know any different.
That's just what the way of life is.
People in Russia was like, all right, he's our leader. I don't care. And it's like,
doesn't change how potatoes taste.
Exactly. Right. And that's why it's like we can sit here and say, oh, it's a bad thing. And it's, this is a nice criticism. It's an allegory for how they feel and how they're treated and visually stunning and offensive. And because maybe they feel themselves as being what has been happening to us is offensive. I mean, to simply represent the waste when they were under Russian rule, there was a lot of famine. There was not a lot going on there. It was like you're being squished by this other country and they want to promote overeating. And it's just like
gluttonous eating
because it's part of their competition and it makes them feel good because they always win. That makes us number one. Like they had nothing else to prove other than we're number one by some stupid, crazy way. And maybe that's really what happened there. We don't know. We weren't there. I haven't read the history of it, but it makes sense to me that that's why it's visually represented in such a grotesque way.
Dan, you referenced mentioning offensive and how it tells a story, makes the message go forward. It just clicked in my mind. Requiem for a Dream. I would never watch that movie again. I'm glad I watched it once. It's a phenomenal tale about why you should not be doing drugs.
Yeah.
It is just, it destroys everybody, no matter who you are. And it's it's a visually the sound's great, visual's great, the acting's great. I want to say Danny Boyle directed. I'll have to look it up. But it, in the same vein, like it's full of images. I'm like, that's upsetting. I don't ever want to have to go through that.
Yeah.
What about like Train Spotting?
Oh yeah. Him trying to shake the heroin. Jesus,
That's Danny Boyle.
Yeah.
that's definitely Danny Boyle.
So I think if you want to visually be challenged by an interesting story, go for it. But this, I'm not. I think all of us are like, don't seek this out. This is a really super challenging film. I'm glad you guys were willing to watch something crazy because I was like, hey,
full disclosure, I wasn't willing.
Well, I mean, in the end,
I went along because I love these guys.
Peer pressured
and I
into
wanted
it.
to.
I don't know. I
pressure.
think maybe I'm a little more upbeat or positive, or maybe I've got more tolerance for the grotesque because I think like I'm glad I saw it. It certainly exposed me to ideas and visuals that I never would have seen otherwise. It's given me some food for thought.
Yeah.
And it's given me a bit of curiosity about what the Hungarian experience has been since 1948.
Yeah.
And these are all things that this movie has prompted me that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So I feel like I watched it and like it was definitely challenging in a few different spots in a few different ways. But I'm glad that I watched it. Earlier, I don't remember, Brian, if it was you or Blake with you saying like, I don't know who to recommend this movie to. And I kind of share that sentiment. I don't know who I could be like, hey, Mike, you know what movie you need to see?
Let's mess with them.
Mike might go for it. He might give it a shot.
But it's like I'm glad that I saw it with you guys here tonight. I don't know what other settings, like I wouldn't want to watch this with my parents.
Okay, so
This is not a theater movie.
So I keep thinking, and on that same note, it's like at the beginning, the first scene, the first set was they have
Fire.
this pig, and they kill the pig, and then they butcher it.
Oh,
and
I
you
thought it was
see
the fire.
but you then see what happens to the pig and how he gets dismantled, and then the end. He dismantles himself in the same way that they did the pig. So is that then again a representation? We feel like we're just the pigs to the slaughter because we have nothing left to give, or we're empty on the inside. We can give nothing, or everything's been taken from us. I think I'm trying to read into it and give it some sort of gravitas that it may or may not have, but it's really obvious. I mean, it's there in front of you. It's basic storytelling. We're reflecting the same thing visually through different means. One was because we had to eat, and the other is because that's the reality.
But I also think, though, if we had like the 2 paragraphs of context and information that the Sundance audience would have got when this was shown at Sundance, we probably would have came out of this saying like 9.8, fantastic movie, great, visual masterpiece, and it's difficult,
moving,
right,
emotional,
right, perfect movie. But we didn't.
Right. We don't have quite the context. We probably need to read this film properly.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's something there. I'm curious about what it is. But again, it's like, it's hard to recommend. There's so much pork that's cut up in this movie.
Because I like to focus on the positive over the negative, and I don't love speaking ill on things, I'm instead going to recommend the beer. The Stiegel. I prefer the grapefruit, but the Stiegel, what was it, raspberry?
Himberry.
Very good. If you want to jazz it up, maybe a shot of vodka in there. Because it's only 2% to start.
It's a really low.
I really enjoyed the Ota Kringer.
Kringer.
I really enjoy it. I like a lager. I usually like a Vienna Lager. This was really tasty.
Yeah.
I'd highly recommend that with most any movie.
Yeah, really clean. So any final thoughts there, Brian? You're just shaking your head a lot.
It's nodding, you man.
I just said what I had to say about the film, and yes, I agree with Blake. I like both beers. One went much better with this film.
Yeah.
But who's going to watch this film again? So, I'd be willing to try both of them with a different film.
With a different movie. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I don't have any other thoughts other than this is super challenging if you really, and again, it's a good film. Visually, the lighting was really well done. The audio, the sound design was really well done because you
film.
heard the throw up, you heard the puking
Please stop talking about
nonstop for 15 minutes. You heard it and you saw it.
It's so hard
And
to
it was
drink
like,
beer.
how did
And
they?
you almost
how did
felt
they
it.
do that? You almost felt it. You're
I
just like,
didn't
how
see
did
it.
they
I
do
shut
that?
my eyes for that whole scene.
How did they do that? Were they really doing that? Did that really happen? I don't know. I don't want to know. So,
Mister-
How many
you've
times
been
did you shut your eyes, Blake?
At least 4 or 5.
At least 4 or 5. Okay.
Yeah.
I only had to slightly glance away towards the end.
That
when
should
he
be a
was
metric.
like-
That should be
Yeah.
like
The-
the break,
the
close eyes,
self-
the quantity.
Yeah.
How often did it? Yeah. All right.
Self-taxidermy was awful.
Yeah.
Oh, I
that
looked at my
was-
phone and the guys were teasing me like, Blake, you're not watching. Like, I'm not going to. I'm going to check my Twitter while it's still around.
Because if you've seen, so there's that the human body thing that's traveling around.
Oh, the
that's
bodies
the
exhibit. That was
bodies exhibit
fascinating.
Where it's like they plasticized
Yeah, it's
It
gross,
does,
who
but cool.
donated. It's gross, and this is what that is. That's what I've
Yeah.
envisioned. It's like
That-
you're showing the human, you're showing the insides of a creature that has no blood going through it because it's been replaced.
If you liked the body exhibits, then you're
enjoy
probably
this.
the right audience for this movie. Yeah.
All right. Well, I would say if you don't hydrate,
You're going to dehydrate, but you didn't do your long spiel of the.
no,
foot
I'm going
cues
to.
and-
No, I'm giving you the upfront.
You're doing it out of order, man. It's
Out of
weird.
order. All right. Well,
How Hungarian of you.
I know, I'm
The
doing
opinions
it
expressed
backward.
on this podcast are those of the hosts and the guest hosts, and I can't do it justice. And I can't. It's been too long, and I've forgotten.
It's all good. That was a good start, Aaron. I liked it.
Well,
I tried.
Yes, the opinions expressed during the taping of this recording are those of the hosts and the co-hosts and everyone else, and not reflective on anyone because we're not getting paid to do this. We're just hanging out, having fun, talking into a microphone, laughing at each other, and pointing. Lots of pointing.
Hey, that's rude.
And head nodding. Thank
And
you
head
very
nodding
much.
and nodding and nodding.
Yeah,
and nodding.
you don't
So-
get all the head
They're perfect
nods.
for a
Yes.
vocal medium.
All right, so I'm gonna thumbs down. Don't watch this, people. I appreciate my friends giving me the liberty to pick something crazy, but I don't regret watching it. But I'm not going to recommend it. This is a challenging visual experience.
7 out of 10.
All right,
A 7 out of 10. And dear listener, be careful with candles and matches.
and yeah, well,
And soup.
and soup,
I hated this movie.
lots of soup.
Also, the word I was trying to remember earlier was resentment.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay.
So
right.
Dan, paste that in earlier. Do extra work. Please and thank you.
Everyone
All right.
needs an editor.
Yes. Well, thanks for listening, everybody, and hanging out for this. Oh my gosh, I don't know.
I already
In the
said-
damn podcast.
I already said be careful with matches and fire. Be careful with
Listen,
soup.
Brian,
Okay,
thank
I'm
you.
gonna
Signing off.
hit the stop button. Let me over there. Now
Be
put
careful
some-
with soup. Be
now put
careful
some
with
sounds in
pigs.
me knocking stuff over.
Be careful with eating contests. Be careful with Russians. Be careful with guns. Be careful
Oh my God,
with
turn my mic off.
taxidermist pigs. Be careful with pigs. Be careful with little alien. What was that? It was like a key ring. Like
Yeah.
what the hell was that? Be careful with alien baby.
Careful with cocks.
Letterkenny.
Yes. Well, be careful of roosters that are outside of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
door. You're
Be careful of
doing
roosters.
things in.
And be careful
There
with your
is-
junk.
Yes.
Yeah.
Watch your junk. All right. Thanks for listening. We're out.